20 and the 19. Those are the only ones that I have.
I think you're on.
All right. Good morning and welcome to the Muscatine County Board of Supervisors meeting. Today is Monday, October 4th, 2021 at 9 a.m. and the first item on the agenda is to review the agenda.
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Jeff, seconded by Scott. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, 4-0. The next item is item number 3, discussion and possible action to approve the claims dated October 4th, 2021 in the amount of $304,302.84.
Move approval.
Motion by Jeff. Seconded by Scott. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 4-0. Okay, moving right along to item number 4. Discussion and possible action to approve the change order of number 13 on the Muscatine County Jail with a booking expansion in the amount of $1,637.49 with Eric Furness. Our planning and zoning administrator.
Yep. I don't have anything really additional to what Mike is telling you in his memo. There was just a miss on their design that they didn't specify a couple lights in two of the small areas as part of that remodeled portion. So something the electrician caught a week or two ago when they were getting ready to move into those areas, that there was no light specified for these two little rooms. So it just wasn't on the design print. So there are two rooms that have to have lights, 2 lights in each room. There's a special recessed light that goes in that security ceiling. The only good news, I guess, is that we have the lights on hand already that were spec'd for phase 2 that we can utilize in this phase 1 and get these ordered that'll be used later. They're the same lights, so there won't be any delays, hopefully, because we can utilize what we have in their material inventory already. So.
Okay.
All right, well, I'd move the approval.
Motion by Jeff,
Second.
seconded by Doug. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by aye. Opposed? All right, 4-0. Okay, moving on to item number 5. Items with the county engineer, Keith White. We have A through E. Item number A is discussion and possible action to approve the various utility permits.
We have one utility permit this morning from Brett Whitlow, Sweetland Road, Muscatine, Iowa. It's to bore a water line across the road at Sweetland from a house at 2001 to a planned shed.
I'd move to approve. A second.
Okay, we have a motion by Scott, second by Doug. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
4-0. Opposed, it's Eric. All right, any other utility permits?
No,
Okay.
just that one.
So, moving on to item B, this is discussion and possible guidance on the repair or closure options on a portion of Keokuk Avenue from Salisbury Road south approximately 3/4 of a mile. This was something that I know that we've had on the discussion over the last 1.5 to 2 years, and we had requested Keith to kind of give us an update on that. From what you've shared, Keith, can you give us a little more information on what those numbers are and what those options are for?
Well, at one point we looked at 5 options, and we really feel there's only 2 that make sense. One is to leave it like it is, which is essentially no cost to the taxpayer, and the other is to replace it with a structure of a minimum size that we think will function without failing constantly or plugging constantly. And, we had proposed to you a 12x6 reinforced concrete box, which meets a 10-year event. That's the minimum that the standards normally call for on a secondary road. If we went to a 25-year event, then we're looking at a twin box, significantly more cost. We have seen a 12x6 work in a situation like this, and if it were to plug with sand, it's big enough we could get in it and clean it out. And, you know, the cost is probably in the $250,000 range. The road really needs reshaping and re-rocking, as well as the placement of the structure. So, otherwise, you know, some variant of leaving it like it is, whether it's the gate closure and level C or just plain vacate it, or at least a portion of it, then the property owners could do as they please. If it's vacated, half is essentially going to either side of the road.
How, right now, I guess, how would that work for us for, like emergency services and things like that?
Same way it's working right now. I mean, if you need to come to Keokuk you're gonna have to come in off of Bayfield and go north.
Keith, and one of the questions I'd had is I look at, what do we have? We have probably nothing in our 5-year plan to address that road, or did we have, this would not be in our 5?
We do not.
Okay. Okay.
Previously, the culvert, the pipes that went under that road, those were, as I remember, were, installed several times.
Yeah, multiple times.
Multiple times. And the reason for that was they were either washed out or completely plugged, is that correct?
Yeah, and I would say the more common one being completely plugged with sand.
Yeah. And in my mind, you would have to have some type of a structure that would be large enough to be able to get in there and clean that sand and debris out, because I've looked at that, we've discussed this thoroughly, and I can't see that anything is going to change in regard to the flow of sand and debris coming down in there and plugging that, no matter how large that is. Would that be a safe assumption?
Yes, I think that's a fairly safe assumption. Certainly pipe culverts.
Yeah.
That's where, again, we thought a 12x6 is 12 wide, 6 tall.
Yeah.
You can get in and clean that out if needed.
Yeah.
What was in there before, previously?
Well, in all of my time here, it's just been a row of smaller culverts.
Okay.
You go back to like the 50s or 40s, 50s, there was a 30-foot bridge in there.
A 30-foot span bridge, basically.
Yes, so, you know, or 20, it might have been 26 foot. And I don't know, I assume that was gone before your time, right?
Yes.
So I don't know why they chose to take it out, or if it washed out, and why they did. Those culverts are, you know, they were essentially almost a low water crossing, the way they function. And, you know, that was one of our alternatives, looking at a low water crossing. Well, you need to vent that, put a pipe in, and it's just gonna silt in. So kind of a constant problem. So we feel we need to go big enough that it's fairly functional or not at all.
Keith, your estimate for the 250K was for a 10-year event, was that, and that's also redoing the road, or is that?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
How many acres of tillable farm ground in that bottom does that road service?
Oh, I don't know.
I didn't look that up, and that thought struck me.
I'm not sure, not letting Mr. Miller is here.
Yeah, all it is.
Yes,
I'm sorry?
yeah. There's well, down there's 125 acres in the,
There's 125, and that's the only access to it?
no, that's to the, south field is the only, that's blocked right now with gates. I can't get to it. And, well, half.
You
of that-
cannot access this field currently, is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, about half of it, I have to use Keokuk to get into it.
And you're row cropping that currently?
Nope, CRP. It's all CRP. But I have to maintain it.
Right. But you do have access to it coming in from the other side, is that correct? Is that
There's
that 120, is that all we're dealing with here? Is that,
Oh, well, there's, on the other side of the road.
that's my question.
Yeah, I don't know how many acres over there, and it's blocked.
Ralph Danner, we
Yeah.
farm in Bayfield, and I own Salisbury, my son, Ben and I do. We farm the Harper Farm, which is up on top of the hill, but we do, when it was open, we used that road quite a little bit. More so in the winter, because we winter our cows down there, and our feed yard is on Salisbury. We can get there, but it's about 2 miles further going around than going that way.
Mm-hmm.
We actually probably would utilize that road quite a bit,
Mm-hmm.
if it was accessible. But I also am favorable for you guys being prudent and trying to, stretch the money as far as you can. But as far as, our operation, we would probably use that road fair amount.
Mm-hmm.
And one other quick comment, probably shouldn't say it right now, but I really appreciate what you did to Bayfield, is crowning it up, the road. Made a road out of that, out of Bayfield.
Mm-hmm.
Well, again, this is a discussion and guidance from that. Any other questions from the board? So right now, we have the option of either closing it or making the repairs needed to open it back up.
Well, as I see it, you're looking at $250,000 to do a repair on the road. I think that if you look at, it's all a trade-off, right? We have a certain budget, certain amount of dollars available to us to do work. And as I look through the 5-year plan, and I don't remember how many deficient structures we have in the county, it's a pretty good number right now. So it's what are we not gonna do if we do this, and at what point in time? And to me, I think the decision has been kind of kicked down the road a few years, that we're just, it hasn't reached the priority list of other structures that we have. We have other structures around the county that we struggle with as well. It's a tough one. 3/4 mile of road, we spend about $6,500 a mile to maintain the road. That's about right. So that's $250,000 is about 30 years of funding on that piece of road.
You
For
wanna
that
go ahead?
3/4 mile.
You wanna say something?
Yeah, I'm
Can
gonna,
you come up real quick so
Yeah.
everyone-
I'm Terry Holiday. I'm the gentleman who lives at the bottom of the road and probably the most affected by it. And, my problem with it is winter months getting out. It's a north-facing slope, sun doesn't shine on it, so there's always snow there. The county has been doing better with maintaining the road when a snow event comes, but I leave at 5 a.m. and actually had 2 days last year that was a failure to getting out because of the snow. And my house was there. It's not like I built it afterward and asked for the road to be opened up. I have a lot of delivery stuff, as most people do nowadays. Just get some meds every 2 weeks overnight, and a lot of times the delivery vehicles don't want to go down and come up and have to make several phone calls or try to go meet them somewhere to get items. That's the biggest effect to me, is just getting out of it, or the other way, you know, drive out.
It's not a walk in the park for you to go the other way either, is it? That's all
No,
shaded,
It's a,
and it's on that curve
well, it's on
coming
that,
up around
it's on
there.
that curve, and it's a mile further for me to get to town, but I'll drive that way, because driving all the gravel, you know, you got me, and I assume Briskers and Hurlbutts drive that way. I've seen them go that way a lot. So that just puts more traffic on.
I get that, but either way, coming out of that bottom that we're speaking of.
Yeah, but over there I have a gradual, and I'm moving and going up. You know, I used to go down and turn around at that creek to get a run to go up the hill. Well, now with it gated off, I don't even have that option. I come right out and have to go up, and the road is washboardy now because trying to climb the hill and the gravel, it needs to be gritted a little more frequently because of that. And, you know, some drivers, delivery drivers, floor it up that hill, you know, the more you drive on it hard, you just tear it up more. I try to take it easy, but going the other way is a lot easier. I mean, I could make it the hill if I could, up that hill if I could go down and turn around, but I can't go down there because the road's blocked.
Four-wheel drive's kind of standard equipment at your house, isn't it?
No, front-wheel drive car. I purchased brand new tires, snow tires last year, and made it out all but a couple of events. I mean, if it worked for that, yeah, four-wheel drive would be a lot.
Okay.
I mean, that's the biggest effect to me, just plain getting out of there, getting things delivered.
So, our discussion again is in regards to this. Thank you, Terry. Is there anyone else in the public that wants to comment on this before we make our decision? Go ahead, if you could just state your name and your address. We can just try to keep it down to just a few minutes. We've got other items we want to try to go through, so.
I'm John Miller. I own ground up next to Keokuk. And I was wondering if you plan to close it, what's that gonna look like? I mean, will it be blocked at the end? Will it just be left the same way it is with gates? Will there ever be any maintenance on it? It's just closed, blocked off? Something else I was wondering about is, I understand that, okay, you wanna put a box culvert in or with it, that you can get inside of. I don't know, I was just thinking that's a tremendous amount of money. Couldn't you get by with a 3 foot, couple 3 foot, steel heavy tubes that, yep, and they'll plug up. But couldn't you have an excavator come in there in a day and rip it out, clean them out, send them back in and go? I don't know, it seems like a tremendous amount of money to put a box culvert in there, and you're gonna be down cleaning it out anyway. That's what was in there, was 3 foot tubes before. And then they fill up. And you can't pull a galvanized one out and stand it up and dump it, but if you put steel tubes in it, heavy steel, why wouldn't that work? I don't know. Another thing that, by closing that road, I brought this up before about, when the river comes up, I lived there all my life, and it will take Salisbury Road out. And it's out for months, you know, to get it back together, because it gets current on it. Keokuk does not. That all is backwater, comes over the top of that. After the river goes down, run the grader down it, you're good to go. You have access back to park, there's people live down there, park commissioners down there. I just, you close it up completely and you don't have any other way out of there. Salisbury's gonna wash out east of Keokuk. That's where it's gonna go out. That's where it always goes out. So, it's just something else to think about.
Okay.
I forgot to mention that we spent $1.5 million on that bridge that was approved down Salisbury for river access, emergency access, and the point that he brought up, that road being closed, you know, if it was worth it, Keokuk gives you another avenue to get down in there.
It doesn't take that road out in the flood. That's all backwater, and it doesn't gouge out, nothing. It just water goes down and you run the grader over it and away you go. Whereas Salisbury, it does lots of damage. So, it's just something to think about. You could still get in there, come down Keokuk to get to the park. So,
Keith,
Thank
a structure like this, is this farm to market, federal bridge money? This is all local funds only? Okay, so it'd have to be funded 100% out of local funds?
Yes.
Okay. So to your comment about the other bridge, those are federal bridge money available for those. So we have to balance, how do we get the most benefit with our local dollars? We have to provide a certain amount of match, and that's one of the balancing acts Keith makes to whether you can get funding for it or not, if there's other pockets of
In
money.
the prior meeting, November 9th, 2020, I believe, one of you guys stated that you'd spent the $1.5 million. That's where I come up with that number, and then
Yeah, I think it was
also,
about that.
Keith mentioned that on the 2018 survey from the Department of Transportation, there was approximately 60 vehicles a day that went down
That was a good, that's one of the questions I had.
Myself personally, and I stated that in that discussion for that $1.5 million bridge, the only reason I voted in favor of that,
Yeah.
the only one, is because of the river access there for river rescue. And in that regard, that's the only reason I voted to spend $1.5 million on that bridge.
And I don't remember what that was, there was federal bridge money on
It
that,
was
like 900,000 of it? More than that,
80% of it.
80%, yeah.
Sherry, would this possibly qualify for any of the CARES Act flood mitigation if we were to put in some of that sewer stuff, or is that not even, we don't know that yet?
That's a great question, but I haven't seen anything that talks about that specifically. And from everything I read, they're not gonna come out with any more specific direction on the Recovery Act, using Recovery Act dollars, so.
Yeah, 'cause it, from what you're sounding like, I mean, a potential flood mitigation, I don't know if it would qualify, but, okay.
that's all I.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Anybody else have, go ahead, just state your name and address.
My name's Todd Harfst. I live at 2046 Salisbury Road. I have about 97 acres of farm down there, and I run cow-calf operation. Basically, since this road's been closed, I've got 1/3 of my cattle, because I was running cattle up on Bayfield Road, and it's just not feasible to load up 60 cattle and run them up there. We basically ran them down the road. I was share farming with a farmer that lives on Bayfield too. He can no longer get to my place. The hill coming on Salisbury Road, I measured it last night. It's about 22 feet wide. So when you're bringing equipment down that road, it's very dangerous for the farmer and the people that are traveling out there. Since the bridge and everything's been going in, there's so much activity and people speeding through there. We had a murder at the Salisbury. I mean, the place is getting big and there's a lot of people down there. So it's just difficult for us to be able to manage getting 20-foot piece of equipment and tractors and combines and everything in and out of there. It's just almost unfeasible to the point of where, you know, I had to cut ties with the farmer that I've been working with for years and years because of the travel and the dangers of him coming to do the stuff. I've got about 50 acres maybe that's tillable that I run beans and corn and stuff on, and this year I've tried to make steps to be able to do it myself, but you know, I'm still getting established as far as being able to purchase combine and that kind of stuff, so I don't have to make the travel time of being able to come down there and survive. But it's really been crippling for my operation. I have two teenage boys that I'm raising, and I grew up out there since I was 6 years old. So I've taken a boat out of there to Keokuk when the water gets too high to be able to access through Salisbury, and pretty much on a regular basis, once or twice a year since I've been out there. So I'm sure all of you guys have driven down Salisbury, down the hill, but how many people have towed a piece of equipment or dealt with somebody coming rushing up on you, or where you only got 22 feet of road and there's nowhere to drop a tire or anything to make a little bit more room for somebody to get around you. That hill's been bad for years during the sunset and the sunrise because of the sun blinding you. It's also a low-lying area that you see fog and that kind of stuff where you don't usually see it. So, I mean, it's really difficult for me to operate, and I'm trying to come up with different scenarios that'll work so that I can survive to be out there. But basically, this has just crippled me, not being able to have that access and losing my farmer, and, you know, having to cut down my numbers on my livestock so much just because, you know, it's not feasible to put 60 cows on a trailer and haul them up to a spot for the winter time and then turn around and do that. Again, I tore up equipment, and I've tried to run them down the road like I used to when the road was still open, and it's just, you know, with the ditch and everything else, it's just not feasible to do it. So I'm hoping that you guys can figure out a way to make this work for us, because, you know, my grandparents bought the farm in the late 70s or early 70s, and I've been out there taking care of things, and I've made an investment. I built a new house down there, and now I'm just, you know, trying to survive through all this stuff and come up with what's going to work for me. I've worked with the county on building the new bridge. They use my property for all their equipment to store and that kind of thing. So I've worked with the county, and I'm asking for you guys to come up with something to work for me, because I have a big investment in the bottom. So thank you.
All right. Anyone else have anything else they'd like to comment on? All right. Keith, could you help us out with some of the questions I think that Mr. Miller had in regards to if we were to,
Yeah, I can. I didn't offer any detail because this is not a vacating hearing
okay,
or anything, so.
all right,
But to answer some of his question, the gates that were down there for the closure were located to allow access to the last properties, not including your second field one. But if gates were to remain, they can be moved. I mean, if we're still looking at this situation going into winter, we'll definitely move the one on the end down there by Mr. Holliday so he can have more of a run. But if it was vacated, it's really would be somewhat the wishes of the property owners of where signage would go. At a minimum, we'd have to have signage down there where the drainage cuts across the road. And we would probably, you know, grade that down to not as severe of a crossing there. Which probably means that he could probably run his cattle around there if he so chose. But that's details if it's vacated, and what the you know, anybody that adjoins has a say in the vacating proceeding. What they'd like to see, or that they object, or all the above. But was there another question I should answer in there?
About couldn't you put steel tubes in there, thick walled steel tubes? tubes and stand them up and dump them,
Well,
lay them back in.
it's very, very uncommon. I don't think we have the equipment that can lift a 36-inch steel tube full of sand. Yeah, and you're right, it is going to plug just like the others. And, you know, really knowing this has come up, I had one of my foremen say, you're not gonna put pipes back in there again, are you? Because, I mean, it's been a constant maintenance cost over the years. And like I said, it started with a lower row of culverts that got plugged up and then some above them, and you know, and as it gets out in the field to the west and builds up out there, that's really when it backs up, and we've cleaned it. It's a constant maintenance situation that we believe the only way it functions is with a larger opening.
Okay.
And then down the road, with a large concrete structure there, and the amount of material, the tonnage of material that's gonna flow through there and set up and sediment downstream, won't that just create more ponding back into the structure area?
I mean, that's what
I mean,
occurred
it seems like it
before.
to me.
We used to go down there yearly and clean the beaver dams out. I do remember doing that. I've taken those pipes out 3 times and tried to clean them, and they folded and pretty much destroyed them, and we had to put new pipes in.
Yeah, in my mind, to remove those pipings and to take them out and clean them, I have a hard time believing you're not gonna destroy the integrity of the pipe. I see that as a difficult task. I also see it as a situation here where it sounds like an endless putting good money into bad to me. You know, I don't have any problem fixing something, per se, but this is one of these issues where it's never fixed, in my mind. It just continues on. Everyone here that spoke has generally told the same story, that they're gonna fill up and they're gonna be bad and it's not gonna work. And it's gonna be endless dollars into this. You know, if that was the only road to go down to the river down there, I'd be all in on it, because I think you gotta have a good road as such we have to the river access, because of the proximity of that to other access for river rescue and so on and so forth there. I think that's vital. But I'm having a hard time with this, putting good money into bad. When we look at the traffic counts on this, and everybody still has access, yeah, there might be some inconvenience of having to drive a little bit farther and so on and so forth, but that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think where, you know, kind of where I'm at is, you know, when this has been a couple of years, we've discussed this, you know, it's a pretty good chunk of money. If we had the dollars, it'd have been taken care of already. What's the end of the dollars? You know, I think that, you know, I would hope that if you go into a vacation process where the county just says we're gonna vacate that road, that there's maybe a solution in there that'll work for the landowners so they can get cattle through or do whatever. If we do proper grading, you get the fences out of the way. And, you know, I get a little worried about, you know, roads that are vacated too, and people always believe they're there. So that's another challenge, I think. It's probably then we make it part of the sheriff's problem.
Thanks.
You know, I just, cause I always think about the trade-offs, you know, you know, the $250,000, where does it come from, and how do we get that $250,000, and where else? You know, it's kinda like the whack-a-mole game. So I
That
think.
$250,000, Jeff, is just the start.
Yeah, I think I think and I don't like to, I understand the tubes and they'll fill up and you could dump them out, but that's a Band-Aid and, it'll probably, what's the mobilization, $3,000 every time you move an excavator to a job, Keith? 3,000 is about what I pay every time I have to get them mobilized. 3,000 plus a day of a guy on an excavator, you're probably $200 an hour, so you're $6,000 every time you gotta do that, and it's just adds up. And this is kind of like our conversations about other roads in the county where we spend $6,000 a mile, $6,300 a mile on maintaining a road, and we've got some roads that are hitting 10.5, and if there's not a lot of activity there, it's kind of hard to justify when you got other roads that need work. And there's, I understand it affects everybody, but I'm kind of thinking that we need to head down the vacation, looking at vacating the road and see what kind of solutions that we might be able to come up with there to make it work for everybody. That's kind of where I'm at. I don't see us finding $250,000, and with the rescue funds or whatever they're called, the big risk there is if you use them and then they come back later and say that wasn't an appropriate use. Now all of a sudden you got to find $250,000, which we don't have. If we had it, we'd do it already.
If it's vacated, does it still stay gated, Keith?
Well, normally it would not, but I think that would be an option if the property owners wanted that.
Basically, a vacation process, the land goes back to whence it came, correct? So
Yes.
whoever the abutting property owners would own that right away, and it's free and clear of theirs, and they can do with as they please as any private landowner.
But wouldn't we still have, like, utilities and fiber and,
If there are utilities there, they maintain their easement.
okay.
That's in the code.
I have one more little question. My kids during this, the homeschooling stuff, I talked to Keith. The phone company said that the utilities are damaged on that road in that area and that they could bring me service too. So that's gotta be something that's gotta be, I talked to Keith, he said that that's not true, but it's not my job to call the utility person a liar, so. But the phone lines are damaged in that area or on that road, and that's what the phone company did relay, so.
Which service do you have?
It's, West or whatever
US West, Quest, whatever they're
the.
calling
Yeah,
themselves,
because I mean,
AT&T,
they
whatever they're
can't get a line to my house, so I don't have service, because they told me that it was damaged on Keokuk.
I don't know if they're the lines that's being used, but there's some lines sticking up out of the ground right there. It was cut when the culverts were removed. I don't know if they're old lines or new lines.
Maybe that's something we can discuss if we were to get to that step on the, vacating the road. I just want to give my opinion on it. I guess my thoughts were just, obviously the 6 foot, Keith, was larger than anything we've ever put in, if we were to put that in.
Correct.
So the plugging and obviously would, I don't know if that would be the same thing when we say we've had them from 3 feet. I guess I was just pointing that out, that it would be twice the size, so maybe much more time. If there was really more growth in there, I think that would be the discouraging piece that I look at it and saying, if there's more traffic, more people going to the park, and this would be another access point from either emergency services, that's where my concern would be on trying to figure out ways we could repair it. I am challenged with the budget, not knowing how we would be able to fund it, knowing that we don't even have it in the 5-year plan. So yeah, and I would really be interested in figuring out if there's a way we could utilize those dollars from the American Relief Act, but we don't really know how. And I also don't wanna give it back if they're not gonna, if I could utilize them. So I guess my only comments that I wanted to finish up with was just that I would really like to repair the road, but I know that we don't have the dollars, and I don't know how to really come up with it. Just kind of similar in our process of knowing that we need to have budgets to be able to meet those needs.
I guess I'd like to know if we vacate it, do we grade that and put it in a condition where they can use it for now? Or do we leave it like it is?
Well, at a vacating proceeding, the landowners have often made their wishes known, and then the board decides if they're granting those wishes or not. I do not think we can be diligent in our duties without providing, the normal standard at the end of a road is the diamond signs, that those would have to go up. So I don't think it would just become, through traffic. But again, I would think in the area of the stream there that we would flatten that out a little more, and, it could probably be traversed with, I guess, let me back up the issue becoming, typically the property goes back half each way, but once you do the research, if you found out it all came off of Mr. Miller's farm, it all goes back to him, if that's where it came from. That would not be normal, but once it's his, he may decide he's fencing it off, closing it off, and there ain't nobody going through there, cause it's his ground, and that's gonna be his prerogative. So, the answer to that, Doug's really gonna be when, if you have a vacating hearing and all those property owners make their positions known, you're going to, you could possibly do the whole stretch, but there would have to be agreements between property owners, otherwise you would be landlocking a couple properties there. So odds are you're only gonna be able to do between where the gates are now, so you're not landlocking anybody. However, so we were keeping Mr. Miller from getting to his second field entrance, and, he was relying on the structures in the road to get across the drainage that splits his field. So odds are you're vacating, even a smaller area. Although, you come back farther, I said, at a minimum, probably half the road is still his, so he could travel down it.
Okay, so this was just a discussion with possible guidance. This was an actual, any action other than just a consensus to be able to try to plan to move forward. And from what I'm gathering, we do have a consensus that we will probably start making the steps moving forward to close the
Go to a vacation, go
to
to
go to
a
a vacation of
process, which will be public hearings.
Yes.
And then I would encourage landowners to think about what it is they would want and what condition that property would be put back in. It sounds like those are all things appropriate for a vacation process, right, Keith? And then I think.
Correct. I have a long time ago, but I've seen where a whole stretch was vacated and they wanted a culvert put in across the road. And it became,
could ask for
then
that,
it
yes.
became theirs to maintain.
Yes.
So,
That's a
there are a lot of
possibility.
possibilities. I think today we're mainly looking at, are we gonna spend
Yeah.
money to, what we feel is fix it right, or are we gonna look at vacating?
And again, that was just a item that this had been on our discussion, and I think Mr. Holliday had sent out several emails in the past, and I wanted to just kind of address those and try to get this discussion either getting to a point where we're gonna say yes or no, and have that board decision, to have a consensus, so. That is all we had, so no other comments, we will move on to item number C. All right, thank you guys.
Thanks, everybody, for your time this morning. Appreciate it. and input.
Okay, so item number C is discussion on cost of collecting trash and items dumped on the shoulder and ditches this was another item that we had on the discussion from a year ago with Keith and his staff. How much dollars are we actually spending and how much time and staff time picking up, you know, couches, trash, things like that in the ditches, and what does it cost on our taxpayers?
So when we spoke of this some time ago, this is kind of a summary of the last roughly year, where we spent about 10 grand. The labor, the equipment, that's not gonna go away. But in years past, in 1920, before this, we did have a little over $400 in tipping fees, but that was from a bridge we tore out, not from trash in the ditch. In 1819, we had none. In 1718, we had $14. In 1617, we had over 900, but again, it was bridge and culverts that we removed that were damaged beyond full of dirt and that. So, you know, we paid tipping fees for trash we generated. 15, 16, we had $59. But it's only in recent history that, you know, that we're looking at. I said in the past, we'd pick up a couch out of the roadside or whatever and take it down there, we were not charged. But now we're charged, and it does seem with some of the changes in solid waste that the cost to the county taxpayer is, you know, gonna be more like 10 grand a year.
Well, you know, this is maybe this may be for our rep on the commission, but my understanding is, you know, it's a county landfill, correct? And the Solid Waste Commission is an entity made up of by municipalities and the county, and the city of Muscatine is compensated to operate that.
And they own.
They own the landfill?
They own the landfill.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they own the
Okay,
landfill.
okay.
Yeah, it started out with the
Well, I think we used
city
to,
now
but
has
no.
the property. The
Perfect.
county is,
I
basically
know,
the
that's
farm
right.
permit
Surprised.
is what's used to operate the landfill.
We went back through all of the titles and the abstracts.
Our permit.
The landfill permit is through the original entity, and that's what sort of survives as they continue to
The
try to
Solid
operate
Waste
the
Commission.
facility, yeah. So, yeah, the title of the property out there is all now in the city's name.
So, your $1,172 is basically your tipping fees.
Yeah.
And then your labor was 5,800, and then the equipment was 2,681. So, I guess I would dispute a little bit in regards to when you say that, you know, that those costs are always gonna be there, because technically those costs could be going on repairing the road, they could be going to something else, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's not necessarily saying that those costs and that labor
Well,
is always gonna be
The real
there.
dollars are, you know, the equipment's the equipment.
Yeah,
But the real dollars are seven grand a year.
when you start
Some of
adding in
it's-
the labor and the actual transfer fees, I guess that's what my cost is really what I'm, because that in a sense could be, they could be, you know, doing, you know, patching a hole in the road or somewhere, they could be doing some sort of other actual benefit to the county in regards to this. The tipping fees, that's something that I'd like to see if there's a way you could email me this. I'd like to follow up with some of that.
Sure, I can email it.
With the recent discussion that we are starting to have with the city. I think there is some discussion that they recently have had, and some of the comments that I wanted to bring up later in regards to that communications that I think that we're trying to have with the transfer station and their management in regards to how we're trying to possibly collaborate a little more, work together, having some of the concerns with some of these things.
One of the
because-
things I would say, Santos, we should look at is, you know, people are not all that hard to figure out behavior, right? Follow the money.
Yeah.
So if you go through and you look at the descriptions on these, there's an amazing coincidence possibly that tires and electronics and appliances are on almost every item. What do they charge extra fees for?
Both of those.
Tires, electronics, and
Yeah.
appliances. And so I think that's a discussion we need to have. You can feel like you're.
Correct, and then that's exactly where yeah, when you start looking at some of
Creating a
those things.
behavior we're trying to solve.
So when some of those changes may have happened, and I think this was in 2019 or 2018, when the city moved away from doing the citywide cleanup, and then also at the same time simultaneously started saying, hey, we're getting charged for some of these, TVs and some of these other appliances, and the tires, you only, I think, are limited for, I think, 3 or 4 per year. But you also have to take them down. So, it's difficult to be
I
able
can
to
go back
say
and tell you what year it
that-
had, because I
that-
started dumping them in my
so-
parking lot.
but I guess that's my thought is to look at it and say, this is something that I wanna have that discussion. We didn't have this complete information, but I think that this will be a good step in the right direction with them. And I will say that this will be something that I'm interested to try to have those conversations with city council and with the mayor and some of this county commission board in regards to helping just maybe work together on some of these costs. Go ahead.
To
Chairman.
further that a little bit, with the jail diversion program, we had an issue several months ago where if the diversion crews are out cleaning up areas in town, whether it be walking the ditches on the bypass or anything like that, to dump those items, if it's within the city limits, we don't get charged for it. If it's outside the city limits, the sheriff's office gets charged to dump those items. It's also come up here recently that to dump grass, from the county properties and whatnot, we got a bill last week.
Cost us $30 to dump the clippings from the courthouse lot from 1 million.
And the ironic thing to me is, are we not a city, we reside, that is in the city?
It was explained to me that we, on our utility bill, we don't pay a city fee for that service. And I said, put that on our bill then, and that wasn't something they were interested in doing. Charge us $10 a month or whatever, so we don't have to deal with, how do you pay for this? They don't take a credit card, our general services or the diversion program don't have cash. So it was quite well, they were turned away twice with the clippings.
So we-
At the conference site.
Yeah, one of the things that I did wanna mention, so we did have a small conversation in regards to that with the joint meeting. Not trying to go off too on subject, but they ultimately, again, did come back in and address those concerns with us. Since then, I have spoke with city council, with, the mayor. They are creating a document to kind of track some of those, but their intention is not to charge us any more fees for those dollars and what they're doing. I wanna be able to have this conversation around the tires and the appliances, TVs, whatnot, because I think those are also, items that I think would help us working, collaboratively with them. So they're a discussion that's why we wanted this information, Keith, because I know that this is something that we've seen dramatically go up. And to Jeff's points, that isn't a coincidence. Something has changed, and yet we're the ones kind of being, capturing that, and then we're getting pushed backwards. So again, I think it's just us trying to have those conversations, working together with those two groups. But
Do we know what we are paying $38,000 to the Solid Waste Commission for? Do we know what we get for that?
So I-
Besides bills?
That's a good question.
So I have reached out. I have asked that question. I have not gotten the complete response yet. So, and it's only through just a regular email that I'm trying to get some information on, because those are comments that there's nothing really in the solid waste commission time that I've been on, that I've been able to say, oh, well, is that, you know, what is that? What is exactly right in that? And so right now, again, we're working through the 28E. We're gonna try to get some of those things defined, maybe some more verbiage that, maybe we'll address some of those questions and comments, because we're having those revital, you know, changing up that document right now. So I think that that'll be something that, in my request, is to try to get some verbiage that kind of identifies what's that, you know, $38,654 that we've been paying for the amount of 5+ years, to do that, because that's a lot more than the $30 that we're paying.
Because they're not accepting, because we're taking phone calls, because apparently they just started enforcing their rule that's a couple of years old in the last few months, because they've taken phone calls from people that live out in the county who wanna take a refrigerator down there, and if you live in the county, they won't take it.
Yeah, they won't even take it.
So what's that force them to do? It's not that if they pay for it, we'll take it, they won't take it if you live out in the county. So,
That's unusual, because I
You
didn't
know,
know that.
I understand their dilemma, you know, there's a cost to do some of the things, but I think that, again, we have to think through our actions and the resulting behaviors. You give people no choice, out of desperation, they will do something, and some people will take the wrong way, the easy way, whatever. So we've gotta make it, you know, I want it to be easy to dispose of a dangerous appliance or whatever, because I wanna make sure it's done properly. That's my, you know, the cost is the
Then
cost.
what does that ultimately and then end up doing to our environment? Because then
Right, I
chances
mean-
are, what if some of these things fall in the waterways or?
Right,
or start going
absolutely,
into it? Yeah.
absolutely, it's
Okay,
Which brings up a point.
short-sighted.
yeah,
Which brings up a
a number of
point.
years ago, we thought that $38,000 was to cover the cost for people from the county to take their things there. I don't know now what they're using it for.
now we have the opportunity with Jim in the driver's seat with this 2080. So if nothing else, we already have somebody that is our representative.
Yeah, I think about 25% of whatever the costs were to be paid by the county originally in the agreement, and I think that's just carried on. But again, this all started under really a different hierarchy than it is today. It's morphed over the last 40 years.
Yeah, it's 1976 or whatever that thing was
So
right now.
it's a different animal than it was when it started, so.
And we're scheduled, which I'm gonna get ahead, but on the correspondence, or meetings, on the 2080, we're planning on trying to have that approved by January. So we have time between now and that January date to be able to get together, vote, but again, I'll hopefully have an update for us to be able to share what that 2080 is gonna identify. And maybe we can get some of these things, you know, identified and verbiage on what those dollars go to help those county residents, because you're right. I mean, if you look at where all the trash gets picked up in the county, all those trucks eventually make it to the transfer station. So if they're technically paying tipping fees from county residents, why can't they drop off their TV, or why can't they drop off their 4 tires?
It all goes to, you know, if you recall the whole conversation around flow control a number of years ago and the tipping fees and all that, when they unilaterally raised tipping fees 200% overnight, and then guess what happens? People go to lower cost alternatives, and then and their real dilemma was they needed more money. Instead of thinking about it, you know, what people don't understand is everybody has a choice, right? Some people make bad choices, and what we wanna make sure is we don't wanna drive people to bad choices with our policies. That's a bad idea, you know, it's like the oil, it's the appliances, it's all of that, because in the end, it gets dealt with. I'd rather have it be dealt with properly than having to send the diversion crew or the road crew or whatever out to clean it up, because you don't know if that battery gets dumped in the road ditch and it spills over, and now you got the acids or whatever. That's just not a good thing. We wanna make sure it's done properly, and we need to make it easy. That's gotta be our goal.
Yeah, you know, something that hasn't been discussed in this whole situation here today is, one I think is most important, and that's used oil waste. And where it goes and so on, that's absolutely crucial on where that ends up at.
Absolutely.
And there again, as Sherry had said, I actually had used oil to drop off, like I have for a long time at the transfer station. They told me, nope, sorry, Scott, can't take it. You live in the county.
I took a phone call from a
So-
woman who went there with, cause her son changed her oil, she took it down there and she lives out in the county and they wouldn't accept it.
Yeah.
So she called me and said, what do I do with it?
Yeah.
So,
So, yeah, that creates a real problem for people that,
Paint,
any
oil.
type of fluid like that, any type of fluid, not just
You wanna
use
make sure it's done
automobile oil.
properly. And if it's a monetary issue, we need to have that discussion.
You know, and Keith, on your list of trash and costs and so on and so forth, another thing that's just a percent of what is cleaned up. The landowners and property owners in the county clean up a tremendous amount of this that none of us ever see or ever hear of, because they just take care of the issue. And so, what we're looking at here is just a fraction. Don't be misled that it's only $10,000. No. It's way more than that. And huge inconvenience for property owners and so on.
Yeah. All right, so Keith, if you could email me this,
Yes.
I appreciate that. I'll have some follow-up on some of this that I'll have with city staff. Okay, moving on to items D, projects update.
Yeah, projects, the bridge northeast of Nichols, Schroeder Construction, they moved in, tore out the bridge is gone, they've started driving piling the new bridge, which it will be continuing this week. Denco Construction, who is doing bridge deck repair for us, is still in the county. They're still down on G28, I believe, doing bridge deck patching. And then up on F58 from Durant to Walcott, in preparation for our paving project. Actually, Scott County had taken the lead, did the design, left the work for patching that's going on up there, but we are inspecting it for them. That's just kind of our, part of our shared agreement there, that we're slower, they're busy, and so we're watching that. So Alex is up there watching that. And that's about what's going on in project.
Excellent. Okay, any other questions for Keith? All right, thank you, Keith.
Sure.
All right, moving on to item number 6, discussion and possible action to accept the county sheriff's office civil department's report of fees collected for the quarter ending September 30th, 2021, in the amount of $18,215.66.
Looked like fees were down just a bit, right? Is that, what's that driven from there?
yeah, they,
So, we've been kind of going around, with our, state association. I've talked with a couple of our local legislators, about this issue. If you're familiar with the EDMS, the electronic data, being transmitted from county to county into the court system and whatnot. As part of that, other counties have been able to serve garnishments within our county. This is going statewide, so you see a lot of the bigger counties, we'll say Lynn and Polk County.
That's why I'm seeing all those from Polk, huh?
They are our biggest adversaries right now. Back when EMS came to fruition, we were serving on average about 800 garnishments.
about 1,000.
800 to 1,000 garnishments a year. In the past calendar year, those numbers dropped to about 200 and change. Garnishments are the highest revenue item that comes in and out, or comes through the civil office. So we have an issue with other larger counties poaching our numbers. There's been a lot of discussion with our state association, trying to combat this. This really came to light within probably the last 3 to 4 months. There was some change in the legislature where those other counties had to provide notice to us that there were certain papers within our county. A lot of the smaller counties didn't realize how much they were getting hammered by these other counties until they started getting those notices. Melissa maintains a file, actually several files from the different counties, and the list of papers that are served by other counties that are not our own is extensive. But that's our biggest hit right now as far as the civil office revenue.
So are we doing something to help address that, or are you working on some sort of plan, or are they just gonna keep doing
I
it?
spoke to our local legislators, or state legislators, talked to them about it, gonna arrange a meeting with them. We've been kind of going rounds, I'll say going rounds with the State Sheriff's and Deputies Association. We picked a fight with them about a month ago, because we're losing.
We weren't the only
Concern.
county that did that.
Yeah.
I'm not really concerned about the revenue. My concern is that, you know, typically those type of activities are a flag, let's say. And I wanna make sure our local law enforcement is aware of issues that might be going on in families or areas, because they'll manifest somewhere else as well. So I appreciate that.
One of the issues that we've run into along the garnishment line is the civil office fields calls on a daily basis from business owners or the garnishees even, wanting to know what the next step is. Well, we don't have the answers because we didn't
We
serve
don't
the
have the
paper.
garnishment for the office.
All we have is this person was served by Polk County via certified mail and EMS. So we don't have any of the detail about what service they were given. So it's challenging. I don't know. So there's 99 counties in Iowa. Really, probably 4 to 5 of these counties are have the resources available to them, just by nature of their size, that they're able to employ people to do just garnishments and go out and, I'll say, poach these items. So it's been a considerable challenge for us.
Well, having experienced this myself in my business, I would say that some of your comments are spot on for the garnishee and the business that has to deal with them, because it's been a very frustrating experience. And I just noticed it recently, in the last few months, so that's very interesting that's happening.
It's really come to light since July 1st.
Okay,
So
all right, so we have discussion and possible action on this.
I'll move to approve.
Motion by Jeff,
I'll second.
seconded by Scott. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
I vote aye, opposed? All right,
Thank you for the.
4-0,
sorry.
thank you, Sheriff. Okay, the next item is discussion and possible action to approve the minutes, September 27th of 2021's regular meeting.
Move to approve.
Motion by Jeff,
Second.
seconded by Doug. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
I vote aye, opposed? 4-0. Okay, correspondence, Doug?
COVID update and EDA update, that's all I had for correspondence.
I had, the same COVID updates, the EDA update in regard to the, grant for the levy. Also, received a email from Mike Baxter in regard to, livestock CAFOs in Muscatine County, and he had, that went to Eric as well. Eric, I don't know if you'd like to just comment on that, how you responded back and so on. That I don't want to put you on the spot, but I just pretty general.
But you will.
But you are.
He did one thing that was too atypical of citizen questions when it comes to how large confined animal feeding operations are permitted. I was able, this goes back, he's been in contact with Tybee and me for a couple months. Every once in a while we'll get a question. Want to know if I can provide him maps of where all these large facilities are. We don't maintain a database, but the DNR does. I sent him links. There's very nice, very convenient, searchable, interactive maps that the DNR maintains on their website. I've provided him with that information. They have a lot of information on the master matrix process. I broke it down to further explain to him what our role is and is not in those processes. He did want to know particularly on confinements that don't go through the master matrix process. How do people get notified of a neighbor potentially building a building? And I said, well, we don't always get notified on those. They're farm exempt structures. There's not really a permitting process outside the DNR on the smaller ones. But I simply told him because of his interest, I'll just keep his name, and anytime there is one that goes through the master matrix, because he wanted to know how many there has been in the last couple of years that have gone through that process. I said there's been 2, here's where they are, nowhere near him, but I told him I would just let him know anytime there is one that I get notified of, and I can provide him the area. It's all public information, and he can decide whether he wants more questions on it or not. But for the people out there, you know, they can contact my office. I can give them the web address of the DNR website. It's very thorough, very comprehensive. You can click on a dot and it tells you the name of the corporation and what type of facility has been permitted in the year, and the animal units, whether it's a cattle lot or a large facility or a medium-sized facility. So there's things the public can utilize to access that information.
All right.
Thank you.
All right.
And that's all I had.
Correspondence, I had the similar COVID update, also with the EDA, which was again a great grant that hopefully we can get some work on the levy coming up. Again, that's just one of the first stages that we're working on. Also got the email about the special meeting that they're having with the state and the redistricting starting tomorrow for the new census. Got a call in regards to EMS services in regards to West Liberty and the Trust E areas, and shared with them that we are still in discussions with the new legislation has not been really kind of identified, and so we were taking guidance from our own attorney and looking at how our county attorney is going to be guiding us in that direction. I went to a ribbon cutting on Friday for CarQuest, which is right on the edge of Muscatine city limits going into the county. The old, Curry's building. One of the unbelievably great update that they're doing and how they've updated that location, a ton of parts. They take up to 5 gallons of oil.
The Curry's trucking location?
Yeah.
Down on the south end?
Yeah, their hours are unbelievable. I mean, they're almost darn near like 14 to 16 hours a day. Since there's always going to be somebody there working on trucks, they have a 2-shift service. Car parts. I mean, it's just like going up into an O'Reilly's or something, but it's got a lot of stuff, 2 stories of parts. I think it's going to be a great addition to the county, great addition to the city, and bordering right up into Loiza County as well too. So they just opened up today, would be their actual official day, but they were one of the groups that did share with us that they are taking oil. So good thing for you, as you mentioned, in regards to that. And that's all I had for correspondence. Jeff?
I didn't have anything further to note. I saw some of the others, but I just wanted to thank the staff and other board members actually for the hard work on the EDA grant process and that project. I don't think everybody sees it as a little thing, but that's a project that started in 2013. So there've been a lot of people involved and we put a lot of effort into that, and I appreciate all the hard work for the taxpayers. So it's a great thing.
Yes, exciting beginning.
More to go.
All right. Meetings, Doug?
None. I had no meetings last week.
All I had was on Wednesday, the 29th, was a Board of Health meeting.
On the 28th, we had the, oh my gosh, Solid Waste Commission. And we talked about basically appointing new vice presidents, new presidents, new, not treasurer, secretary. I'm gonna say the one who takes the minutes. And those will go through to the end of the year. One of the discussion pieces was getting the 2080 updated and looking at getting that approved for our January's meeting that we're gonna have coming up. And we did discuss the oil, and one of the comments that the solid waste transfer station manager had shared with us is that they had been under DNR restrictions because they had found not a carcinogen, some sort of a waste chemical that the DNR was fining them with. So they've already they're under some limited amount in what they can get. I think somebody was putting antifreeze or some sort of other fluid in their oil containers, and the DNR now checks their oil. And so then they were under some sort of restrictions to be able to take so much different oil. The comment was brought up in the meeting, well, how do you know that that was even done by anybody in the county? Well, they don't, but that's where their direction is being taken. The solid waste manager had reached out to a bunch of other locations, O'Reilly's and I think AutoZone, that they had taken, that they would take the oil. And then the CarQuest was something that I went to and had that discussion. So that's a positive from that view. On the 29th, we had the joint meeting with the city and the school board and the county board. We had a opportunity at the very end to talk about the challenges that we were just made aware of in the leaves and or not the leaves, and the grass clippings. They were very open to understanding that was probably not a good step, knowing that we're trying to build a better communication, a better team, collaborate a little bit more together, and they wanted to address some of those concerns. I shared with them that, if we're being, kind of separated in some shape or form, how does that work for county buildings in the future when we even have leaves that we want to pick up? Are we now being, segregated in some shape or form to not be able to allow to be getting those picked up? And the discussion was that is not the case, that there's obviously some mixed communications, and that they will look at moving some steps internally and get back with us in regards to doing that. In the interim, they did create a budget fund, or whatever he called it, in the transfer station, and that they would document all the costs that we had for clippings and things like that, but that we were not going to be getting charged for our county courthouse dollars of that nature. And I think that's a good step, because my discussion with them was that as we are working together, it's not just a frustration from my end of trying to say we're working together. It's also a frustration when I hear those comments from staff here in our county, trying to say the questions were, well, what did I do? Did I do something wrong now from the county to the city that they're doing this? And that's a little more the frustration that I shared with them in that meeting. And since then, I've gotten calls from council, multiple council members, and the mayor in regards to these discussions, saying that this is not the step that they want to do, that they are not in any effort in that, and that we will address these concerns because we are trying to work together. And I think that was the biggest positive that came out of that. So I wanted to just mention that. And on the 30th, we had the We Lead, and it was our first meeting coming together with the new We Lead director. so moving forward on that. That's all I have for meetings.
And all I had was on the 29th, the joint meeting. Yeah, it begs you to question some of these services provided. I wonder what we charge when we bring a city inmate into the jail. Do we charge extra? And how about what does Jamie charge when she collects their parking fees? Wonder how much she charges. We probably ought to institute some fees.
Those are,
We reached out to conservation and said, you know, we've got clippings from the courthouse, because the other properties
You're
don't
not
have
helping,
clippings, it's not an issue. And, what the conservation director said was, well, we let the city use our facility whenever they need to, and we don't charge them, why are they charging us for clippings? And
Yeah,
I said, I think this is somebody somewhere drew that line.
Yeah, it's a bunch of
And
nonsense.
exactly, and the, you know, administration of the city probably didn't even realize that, you know, that that's what's going on. Somebody somewhere thought it was a good idea to think it through.
those are discussions that we're having, and I think that, you know, one of the comments that was brought up in the meeting was that, you know, if we don't say any of those things, then they'll never know it.
Right.
You know, some department changes some policy, maybe those things aren't communicated. You know, I think that's why I think it's good that, one, we revised the 2080, we have some sort of policy and procedure in place so that they can see that. And at the same time, we have those discussions with those council members and staff to be able to possibly, again, try to work together, because I think that was the effort that I shared with them after having the MPW update, look at how we're growing as a city and spurring out into the county, but also knowing that those are discussions that I said that we as a board have continued to work with them on housing and trying to improve that. And we're not trying to look for improving housing in the outskirts of the county, we're doing it in the city. So those are things that I think are important, that they see that. And I think that message was sent very clearly to them, so I'm good to hear those things. All right, moving on to item number 10. Item A is action to set the public hearing to rezone approximately 3.31 acres in Waspy Township for A1 Agriculture District to I2 Heavy Industrial District, Monday, October 25th, 2021 at 9 a.m.
Move to approve.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead. Jeff? All right, and a second by Scott. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
I vote aye, opposed? 4-0. Okay. Item B, action to reschedule the previously set October 4th, 2021, 9 a.m. on the position with the City of Muscatine Community Foundation in Greater Muscatine County of Monday, October 11th, 2021 at 9 a.m. This is basically, again, the moving of that. We had the conversation with Charlotte, she's been working with Jim in regards of the verbiage and changes, and so we just move that out.
I'll move to approve.
Okay,
Second.
motion by Jeff, seconded by Doug. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Vote aye. 4-0. Okay, next item is action to approve September 2021 payroll claims.
Move to approve.
Okay, motion by Jeff, seconded by Scott. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
I vote aye. Okay, 4-0. Okay, item number 11, receive information from county employees.
Real quick, I wanted to update you. We had a Zoom meeting with the Lower Cedar Watershed Management Authority Thursday afternoon. It was really a workshop with local EMA directors within the Lower Cedar Watershed to kind of bring them into the conversations on the development that we're currently going through right now with our comprehensive watershed management plan. Your interim director, Brett Becker, was able to sit in on that meeting. basically, we wanted to explain how, to the local EMA directors that will be involved, that it's very important that our comprehensive watershed management plan mention and mirror our hazard mitigation plans that each entity already has, and how that puts us in a better position to go after grant dollars. Obviously, Brett's still getting his feet under him. He didn't have a lot of historical knowledge of mitigation projects we've done in the past. I've been around, so I've pretty much handled that when it came down to talk about projects in Muscatine County. You know, basically, we talked about from 2008 to present, kind of the FEMA projects we've had. As I had mentioned before, through some of the polling and studying that we've done to develop the watershed management plan, Pike Run area has been identified as one of 3 areas that I think we're gonna focus in on. So within the Lower Cedar watershed, we have at least one area in our county that is gonna be really focused on, and there's some up, a little farther up the river. I was able to brief the group on historic issues we've had out in that area. If you recall, after 2008, we lost a big chunk of Iron City Avenue there, and had to work with the drainage district and get creative on how to put that non-levy back, and how we really had to wrestle with whether that was good money spent or not, given the population of that area and the likelihood for that to fail again. The consultant was very interested in hearing more, getting more. I'm gonna send him some GIS data, some mapping that shows where that hole was in the levee, the dollar, putting that into our plan that, hey, this area, not only are we looking at water quality, but we've had major flooding issues. Keith, correct me if I'm wrong, right up Kelly as well, along Kelly, there was some major issues, wasn't there, along in 2008? So right in that immediate area, we've got historical data that we've had to spend significant money. And my hope is that that positions us to go after dollars that maybe are available to buy out low productivity farm ground that could be used. A big push is looking at finding areas that you can relieve flood pressure and put them back to natural floodways. And so, no promises, but you know, the fact that we've already identified Pike Run, the fact that we've got history in this area, I'm gonna keep pushing for that to be looked at. The consultant really wanted data on the issues we've had in that area, so that was discussed. Tried to bring Brett up to speed on it as much as possible, but I think, so that's kind of where the conversation
So I think that, you know, kind of in our discussion before about these watershed funding.
Yeah.
So, you know, I know Eric, we had talked about this when this first came up. We have a few areas in the county that are troublesome for us. And we added them to the list to make sure that, or Eric did, he put them on the list so that as potential areas. And, you know, if we can attract federal dollars, grant dollars to restore wetlands or do whatever we can to mitigate the pressure on floods, I think that's a positive for us in a number of fronts in the county. So just another example of that group and what potential you could get out of it. So,
Good.
thanks, Eric.
Thank you, Eric. Okay, any other county employees? All right, we are moving on to item 12, receive comments from the public. Okay. Moving on to item number 13, any other comments from the board?
Nope.
Okay, it is 10:28 and meeting is adjourned.